Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to take two of our interview tonight. It's the sixth one in a series of Compass improv interviews with prominent people in the improv world. And our prominent person this month is none other than Tara DeFrancisco. Hello, Tara.
That's me. I'm
That is
prominent. I'm
you.
prominent.
And we learned from the first one that I was correct in calling you DeFrancisco, but it also could be DeFrancesco, right?
Yeah, if you want to put that extra Italian flair on it that we lost at Ellis Island, yes, it's
Awesome.
DeFrancesco. But yeah, DeFrancisco is what I go by, of
All right,
course.
awesome, cool. It's so great to have you here. I've been really excited about this, and so there's so much to cover, and I guess we're going to still take it up to an hour if you got that. We
I've
got a little
got.
bit
What do you want to do? What
of
do
a
you? I
tech.
got. I got days. I got hours.
You got hours out the wazoo. Um, Let me tell folks what I know a little bit about you just from a bio that was on your website, and then there's other stuff that's not even on here that we're going to talk about. That
Great.
it's gonna be a fast moving train. So if you're ready to rock and roll, but as I
I'm
understand,
ready.
Tara, you're originally from Columbus, Ohio. Is that
I
correct?
am. Yeah, I'm from Columbus. Everyone here calls it C-bus.
C-bus,
Uh,
yes.
C-bus. Yeah, but yeah, I'm from here.
And then
Um,
as a kid, you had an interest in comedy and improv, and then to sort of you had to go to the mecca of improv of
have you heard of
Chicago,
it?
right?
Yeah.
I've heard of this city, and
You
there
heard
I'm
of
going to
it?
some of your credentials here, and then we can dive into whatever part of this, and then there's even more. Like I said, it's not even on this list, but of course, you had to have some training. It's the Second City, and you also ended up in a Second City touring company, which is a nice
Did.
little a fun experience. You did some
Hmm.
stuff at IO, I guess the former uh, IO
Yeah,
no longer
that's
even
wild.
around anymore, sadly. Former
Yeah.
improv Olympic. One thing that I hope we get to talk about tonight is musical improv. And you did that in Chicago with the Deltones and the acclaimed Armando. I've heard of the Armando, named after Armando Diaz, right?
Yeah, you got
You,
it.
you performed in that. You were awarded funniest person in Chicago by the Free Press, and you were among the top 25 funniest women according to Curve
Look,
magazine.
everybody. What do you need? I'm ready. I'm ready. Yes, and these were all very fortunate things that happened during my tenure in Chicago. I was there for 16 years, so
Oh,
I had a
16.
lot of shots. I had a lot of shots.
I was wondering about, yeah, how long you were there, and then like I'm thinking like
Yeah,
4.5 years ago, and I'll tell you why I know this is
tell
this
me.
is true. You moved back to Columbus,
Hmm?
and you're the co-owner, founder, artistic director of the Nest Theater, which is your venue in Columbus.
You got it.
Um, and then for years you have performed with Rance Rizzuto in
Yes.
Here, the improvised musical.
Yeah,
Um,
that's us.
Man, oh man. And in addition to that, Jesus Christ, you're the president of the annual Improv Retreat. Um,
Yeah. Oh,
so,
I
oh
love
my,
them.
how do you, when do you have time to sleep, Tara?
I don't sleep. I stand. I stand and just think about what I have to do in the morning. That's all I do. That's all I do.
So,
Yeah, I mean, what a ride. We I'm very fortunate. Chicago certainly is the place where so many people move to learn and study, and I was very fortunate to get hired at three of the places that I orbited, which was
mhm.
the Second City, IO, Chicago, and Comedy Sports, and I played there for various lengths, but for 16 years was at most of those three theaters in
Yeah.
some capacity or another, and then our musical here, the improvised musical, which is a two-person improvised musical play, fortunately got very popular and started being pulled to headline in different cities and countries all over the world.
Oh, wow.
So here, the improvised musical now has been to 24 countries and 80 cities as a headliner, which we
Wow.
know how fortunate we are. I mean, improv is already so great, but to be asked to travel and sponsored to travel to different countries to like teach and play and do what you love, made it possible for us to keep going and teaching. But also I got to found the Improv Retreat, which is that sleepaway camp, which is right outside of Chicago, and found the Nest Theater, which is in my hometown of Columbus. I can hardly call it a town, it's 2 million people.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful place, and so we started living here, and then sort of like traveling to tour. So it was just switching home bases and going back to Chicago as artist in residence or whatever in between. So it just kind of like flipped worlds, but still consider Chicago and Columbus very much home. for
That's
sure.
amazing. You got C
Love
bus
it.
and C. I don't know what.
See high,
Yeah,
as everyone
that's right.
calls it.
I skipped right over the bullet point that had comedy sports, and you said I guess you were voted most valuable player 2004 through
Well,
2007.
you've got a lot of hot info on there that I
Yeah, I
don't even
do. It's
remember. Yeah.
just
Hey.
looking on your about page, and you
Oh my
part of the
gosh.
artistic and educational staff there.
Yeah.
And so basically, yeah. But for those watching, maybe are catching this interview for the first time. This is we've been doing this monthly since the first of the year. And Compass Improv is a St. Louis-based nonprofit that is dedicated to fostering the awareness and growth and the use of improv in the city of St. Louis and beyond. And we're just having a blast, even though we've interviewed some people, a lot of people with St. Louis roots initially. We're expanding beyond that. And Tara, I mean, you've been here, so actually, you have a St. Louis connection with the improv.
I love St. Louis. I
Yeah.
think we've been there. Gosh, I mean, I've been there a number of times. I went once or twice with Second City when I toured.
Mhm.
But I know that as here, the improvised musical, I think I've been to the improv shop maybe 5 times, like 5 times that they let us headline and have the most
Yeah.
ridiculous shows. Some of the most ridiculous shows we've had on the road have been in St. Louis. So I love St. Louis and the people
Ridiculous
there.
in a good way. Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
the best. They're like really good vibes at the improv shop. We were at the old one more than the new, but everything's just so lovely. And we have a lot of campers for the improv retreat that are from St. Louis too.
Yeah.
So they're St. Louis is in my heart for sure as
That's
an
cool. I
improv
know a lot of
scene.
people have attended the retreats, yeah, and so I know there's a lot of love for you in this city.
That's kind.
And so another thing we do with these interviews is that we always ask our guests on this every month if they have a favorite charity that we'd like to support. And Tara has chosen the Trevor Project. We're going to come back to that in about 20 minutes or about halfway through, and we're going to explain a little bit more about what that is and how you can donate. Now you can even double your donation if you donate in a certain way. So I'm going to start off this way, if you don't mind. I think the first time I became aware of you possibly was when I was writing the book, The Improv Comedy Musician with Laura Hall from Whose Line. So I
Mhm.
think you're aware of that, and that was like in 2015. I think that's when maybe when I first heard the name Tara and Rants and hear the improvised
Oh,
musical, but so in the fall, like in October of 2016, I took a road trip from St. Louis to as far as like upstate New York, and I was like looking at cities along the way and just like throwing out feelers for people in these different cities. And in Columbus, I connected with this guy named Brad Shimp, who I know I mentioned his
Brad,
name. Yeah, and
if he's
super
watching.
nice guy, and he not only uh, he set me up to do a musical workshop in Columbus in that month, so four and a
That's
half
great.
years ago. But I actually had me stay at his house with he and his wife, and
So nice.
introduced me to a bunch of the improvisers. Like 14 people come to the workshop and met a lot of cool people there,
Oh,
and so I realized then that there was already like a vibrant improv scene that was going on there. But I remember talk of there was at that time there was word that Tara and Rance were moving back to Columbus, and so
oh,
there was this little bit of apprehension about, well, what's going to happen. They're coming in with this new thing, and they're going to change this. How's the scene going to change, or
yeah.
whatever. And so I stayed in touch with a lot of those people. I became Facebook friends, and I was following you. And I just want to tell you that I was really impressed with the way that you came in and were
Oh,
very inclusive and welcoming.
oh, thank you.
And whenever I saw interactions, you were just like very welcoming. And I couldn't think of a better way to handle that, especially if there was any apprehension on the part of people that had already existing things going on there. So is
That
that,
means a lot. That
I'm
means
sure
a
that was
lot.
an intentional thing that you did, right? Or
Yeah, I mean that's so kind that you said it just that way. I had been teaching through a number of old friends that I don't know how I knew them originally. They may have been coming to the improv retreat or something, but I knew some connections from Columbus that are still at the Nest now. But they were we had a number of students that were kind-hearted, wonderful people that were asking Rance and I, like, would you ever consider moving home to, make a brick and mortar? Because there was no dedicated brick and mortar space that was only for improvisation or sketch or like experimental
Mhm.
comedy stuff. And we just sort of honestly, Bob, I it's a funny thing because we're doing so well with Here the Musical at IO. It was a flagship show at IO on Friday nights, and we started touring it at
Oh,
this
cool.
time. And us leaving Chicago at this time was probably the most what most people wouldn't do. It was like everything was thriving for us at that moment, and we're like, let's move.
Yeah.
But it felt like I don't know. I just believe in improvisation as more of a life thing than kind of a get famous thing. Not that you can't and not that you shouldn't, but it's just for me,
Yeah.
maybe because of battles with like illness or loss or anything like that, it always just feels like
Mm.
improvisation for the heart is more important to me, and it felt more important at that time to make a home for people that didn't have a brick and mortar style home. And so when they kind of came to us hat in hand about it, it just seemed like, yeah, I think we should do this. Because we had opportunities to do things in Chicago still and tour still. It didn't feel like we were really giving anything up. It just felt like a shift. And
Mm.
it felt like an exciting thing to create a home that we'd always wanted and never had, which we have facets of the things we wanted in those
Mm.
theaters we worked at in Chicago, certainly. And there's lots of advantages to Chicago, certainly. But we just wanted to have like a more inclusive space, a homier space, a safe space, but an open space for students and people kind of amplifying more humans at that time was becoming more in the zeitgeist of like, how do we bring more people in than just cis, able, white, male performers, and how can we grow that? And we were just thinking about so much at once with the camp we run that it felt
Mm.
like a natural change. And so it's so nice that you say that. Thank you, because
Yeah.
I know there was apprehension. There was equal excitement. There were like people were asking
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
home, and people were like, I don't know, like what happens when they get here. And I think because we were just friendly and just really wanted everyone to come play if they wanted to play, that it just luckily was a good fit. And we have an anthem at our place that's, high tides rise all boats. And it's
Cool.
something we've said since we started, before we even implemented the nest opening doors here, that we believe that like competition doesn't breed anything positive in improvisation specifically. Like we could, if we all do a good improv show, then the general public just wants to see more improv.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of people, when they get excited about something, think like, this is my thing, so I don't want anyone else to do it. But that's not the case with great arts. Like you don't go to a concert and say, I don't want to see another concert. Right? So
Right.
the improv is just a little bit smaller, so people get really precious about keeping it to themselves. But if we start doing really high level improv, then everyone will just want to see more improv, like they want to see more music or more art. So we're just trying to like let abundance be the key.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I mean, not only the way you handled, yeah, and entering the market or whatever you want to call it, and
Yeah.
come moving back to your hometown. But I just noticed in observing your posts over the years that you have this great sort of positive, optimistic attitude, and even in the face of you've been very upfront about some physical challenges that you've had over the years, where you were in pain and immobile, or
Yeah.
and you maintain that attitude through all of that. And I'm just wondering, you mind speaking to that, like where that comes from, how that serves you? Is that a byproduct of having those challenges?
I think so.
You
I
know?
mean, yeah, like I've never really thought to pen it out and think about it where the source is, but I think you're right. I mean, when it comes
Mhm.
down to, I had a lot of loss in my life at an early age, and I think that I had really great friends and like in high school that have all stayed close, and I just have believed in these kind of living organisms that take care of each other and foster positive environments for one
Mhm.
another. So when I get into those realms of like where there's like sort of bickering where there doesn't need to be, or jealousies or something, I'm always sort of throttled by that, because it seems like we get more done if we take care of each other better. And
Yeah.
of course, my own I've had various illnesses since 2003, 2004, a genetic illness, and now a disability, um, and all kinds of treatments and medicines and things like that that have just been to sustain my actual life. Like I've had, two or three death scares in my life already at this point in my life, where
Wow.
you think, oh, I'm going to die on this operating table, or I'm going to get this implant, or things are going to stop, or whatever. But it's mostly out of genetic illness, and I have an old sports injury that became a spinal blowout. So I couldn't walk for about a year, and then I had a walker for another half a year and relearn
Wow.
to walk. So when you think about, I don't know, smaller scale things in comparison to
Yeah.
losing people you love, or trauma to the body or trauma to the soul, it's like nothing nothing matters besides loving each other well and making good stuff. You
That's
know,
cool. Wow.
this time on our little blue dot is finite. And so I think it's just about making cool, healthy places for people to enjoy as much as they can and do as much as they can that makes their heart sing, you know?
Yeah, and what a great attitude to bring to improv. Seems to be the perfect world to have that attitude with the I mean, it's an expression of "I got your back."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In my
Yeah,
case, we had people that actually had to have my back for like many a month, you know, and it's really wild how many people stepped up to
yeah.
assist. I think there's the St. Louis people will know we run this place called the Improv Retreat, and it's a camp that's often right outside of Chicago that holds 250 campers for an entire weekend. And it's been almost 10 years of that. And there was one year where I couldn't stand at all, and I knew that I had to go and run it. So I like my partner Rance drove to camp. I laid down in the car the whole entire ride. I had a walker and got out, and I had to like lay on the stage to like hold meetings. Like I had to like lay like a mermaid like on the
Oh,
stage to hold meetings, and everyone just supported it. Like all the campers would lay down around me and just wait for me to talk. Or there's no better community of support than improvisers in their best days, because it's
yeah.
what do you need from me? How much yes and can I do? Can we find bits in this and humor in this? It's just like the best people to be surrounded by when you're in pain, for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's
Yeah.
beautiful to hear. So you said 10 years with the improv retreat?
Almost. I think we've had 7 or 8 live events, big
And they
the full year events, but it was started in 2011 or 12.
and they
So it's been
do those
a
camp out
while.
retreats usually happen around June or early summer?
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
be, this is so sad. It would be this weekend coming up. So
Okay.
Thursday through Sunday of this week. It's always the week after Memorial Day.
I
And
guess you
yeah,
didn't do
it's
it last year either in
no, of course.
person.
Like
Yeah, so
we
yeah.
thought maybe this year it would be like some kind of modified thing, but the actual event space that we hold it at still isn't running their camps yet. So it
Okay.
was yeah, not rentable yet, but
Cool.
for the best. Not, next year will be a mighty celebration, I think.
So would it be safe to say like all the things that you've done with improv, and then you even did there was a period of time when you even did stand up years years ago,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
so
I mean, it's all out. Like I did stand up for a solid year or so. I loved it, and I just started improv at the same time, so I kind of went by the wayside. But I
yeah.
did a tour. I do TV and commercials and jingles and stuff like that. But
Wow.
just a
But
hodgepodge life of fun and comedy.
yeah, it's all surrounded about joy and making people laugh, and
Yeah,
yourself laugh too, I'm guessing,
exactly,
along the
exactly.
way. But would it be safe to say that here, the improvised musical, is that one of the more prominent, successful, or best recognized things that you've done?
I would say so. I
Yeah.
mean, we've been touring that show since 2014. Well, I mean, obviously not the last year and a half, since
Yeah.
2014 ending probably, and it's not only the most fun, but I, get to do it with my partner. It started when we were just friends, so it's a fun kind of a fun story of this is like something I do with now my married partner, but we had been best friends 10 years prior to that
Oh, okay.
show starting. Um, and it was just a really fortunate, cool, beautiful thing we hadn't really heard of. I wouldn't say it's only this, but it's close to a musical Herald with two people.
Mhm.
It's not always a Herald, and it's not always a montage, but it tends to lean kind of in this connected, swirly way
Mhm.
where worlds intersect, with only two players. So there's a lot of running, there's a lot of physical bits, there's a lot of singing, there's a lot of like just a lot of beautifully orchestrated chaos. And
Yeah.
it got a lot of notoriety because I think it was such a small cast of people. Um, and the Chicago Tribune really loved it, and NPR really loved it, and all these people kind of started noticing it. So once it got familiar to most, it just
Mhm.
became this thing of its own that now we get to go on the road and teach musical improv. We teach other things too, like sometimes sketch or heralds or
Mhm.
montage work, long form work, short form work. But musical improv, when we're on the road with here, is fairly common for
Yeah.
cities that don't have tons of access to it yet.
And that's what it attended when one and
Yeah.
only time we met. It was a great class. I'm sure I stole some things to use in my my own improv class. Uh,
Borrowed, borrowed.
borrowed, yes. And so I'm just curious. Can we just talk about the genesis of that? So I guess
Yeah.
you and Rance met as players, but there was there something that sparked that first musical
Yeah.
duet? You went, oh
There
my god, this is a thing that we could continue doing.
It was totally on a whim. We did Rance and I both had performed at Second City IO and Comedy Sports, but separately at Second City, but we
Mhm.
performed at IO and Comedy Sports together on teams. And we both did the Deltones together, which was an improvised musical Herald cast. So it was like a large ensemble.
Yeah.
We also did Baby Once Candy, but we were separately in that too. So we just did some musical improv, I guess is the best way of summarizing it. And we were talking about the old IO on Clark Street. For anyone that knows what that is, it's like just this like beautiful old punk rock venue that everyone adored that was on Clark right by the Wrigley Field.
Mhm.
Uh, it was having a last week of shows, and the last week of shows was like just these big blowouts of like ridiculous people. Armando cast was like full of fun celebrities and friends coming back, and all the home teams were doing just kind of wild, like off the rails heralds and stuff. And we were like, hey, can we do a two-person musical just for fun? And Sharna, who was, running this week at the time, was like, yeah, do it. And it luckily sold out. It sold out in like a minutes, which we were shocked at. And then it worked. And I think everyone was just sort of alarmed that a two-person show that was a musical that was lengthy could work at that time, because it was, again,
Mhm.
2014, not that long ago, but long for musical
Yeah.
improv. Um,
Yeah.
and so we just tried this show out and it worked. And then we thought, should we do this again? So when the new IO opened, we started doing it as a show called Here There, Here There, and we went on the road in between to teach in a couple European cities and did it on the road there, and it just kind of caught fire because of its critical success and because we were traveling so much. People kind of started hearing about it in a wider scope. So that's how it started.
That's very, very cool. And the average length of a here musical is about what?
Probably like 45 to an hour, I'd
Oh,
say.
really?
It's
Okay.
usually, yeah, it's like almost, it's a solid one act play, basically.
Mhm.
Um, I think we've done a little longer than that and a handful of times, but generally speaking, yeah, 45
Mhm.
minutes to an hour is
And
what it
obviously, it's
ranges
just
from.
you and Rance and a accompanist, right?
Yes.
So in Chicago or Columbus, I'm assuming you have accompanists that you work with on a regular basis who are familiar with the format. But when you travel, you're probably using
Mhm.
somebody local who you haven't, right?
Yeah, our accompanist here is David Schmall. David Schmall is this is fun. Fun fact, he's the musical director in the studio for the Amber Ruffin show on NBC,
Oh.
and some Late Night with Seth Meyers episodes. So he writes music for the NBC show remote from Columbus,
Cool.
which is awesome. We had a connection with him because of some of our old friends from Boom Chicago and Amsterdam. He just came home
Mhm.
at the same time that we did, and it was like a beautiful, like, hey, we should have known each other anyway, because we had all these mutual friends in common. He's our musician here. But on the road, yeah, it's honestly kind of our favorite part. We go on the road, we meet a musician about a half an hour prior to the show. We do not rehearse with them. We give them an overview of what the show might feel like, and then we trust them to try it.
Wow.
And it is maybe boy, it's the improviser's improvisiest thing you can truly do, of just like, okay, well, let's see how it goes, and
Right.
we can kind of give them our general overview to them is something like play for feeling, not for genre, is a big like note we always try to help out with.
Mhm.
And follow your bliss. If you feel like a song is coming, then play, but if we don't sing, just know that we're letting it tonally affect the scene. And yeah, it turns into whatever it turns into,
Oh,
but
cool.
generally speaking, it's a magical thing because we learn, we get to meet people in like Riga, Latvia, and they
Yeah.
come with their guitar, or they, it's great. It's the
Yeah,
best.
okay, I know the typical accompaniment instrument is the piano, but
Yes.
I'm a guitar player, so I use the guitar in all my
Yeah.
workshops and all that. But have you had many guitar players over
Not
the?
tons, but we've had a handful.
Yeah,
We typically have keys,
yeah.
and people are wildly talented. It's I think that most musicians that do accompaniment are always very quick to be kind of like, I'll do my best, and I've heard about this show, and I'm going to give it my go, and then they're like incredible, and
Yeah.
but it's always, it's always like a shock how good people are that have never necessarily played this way, or they've played maybe more for a short form show where they're doing like boutique small
Yeah,
games
yeah,
rather than like a piece that's an hour long. But we love it because they can bring guitar. We've had a guy bring a guitar. We had a guy play a harmonica. We've had other band instruments, full bands. We've had yeah, like the keys, like I said, is typical, but it's
yeah.
always good, and we're always just sort of malleable because that's what we're supposed to be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I guess what we're talking about this, you're so I know Bill Cott was our first guest. He's done a lot of musical improv, but I think of all of the guests so far, you probably have had the deepest experience with it, and this is near and dear to my heart. So I'd love to ask you. There's other stuff we're going to cover here, and we're going to get to the Trevor Project in just a minute or so.
Sure.
But what are some I know you can't handle every, or you're not going to cover everything you would in a long workshop. Or what are some of your best tips for people that want to get more familiar with and comfortable with musical improv?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you probably know this, but I feel like the best thing you can do as a musical improviser, at least stepping into it, if it's like new to you,
Mhm.
is know that musical improv will make you better at regular, will make you better at standardized improv without music,
Non-musical improv.
yeah,
Yeah.
non-musical improv, because you you have to kind of like figure out what the emotion of the scene is or the point of view of the scene in
Mhm.
order to be like released to sing. We always talk about how a good musical improv show sings because there are no words left to say. It's that
Mm.
we feel so much, or we have such a strong, clear point of view that now a song is inevitable. And because if you take our music away, we do a herald or something tonight instead of a musical improv show, you start noticing that your long form gets better because you're like always looking for a point of view and strong, clear moves and et cetera, because like when they're not being sung, are they being said? So that's a good thing for people that have never done musical improv. It's not just like the gaminess of singing in rhymes and, the playfulness of it, which is lovely. It's also the idea of what's the intent of the scene? What are the players feeling? A big nest mantra of Rance and myself is who are these people and how do they feel about one another? And that's the
Ah,
thing that we always highlight for our students. If we feel like if a scene is stagnating, we continually come back to the source question, which is who are these people and how do they feel about one another? If that's missing, then it's really hard to sing a good song. You can sing a playful song, you can sing a bantery song, but it's going to be witty rather than heartfelt, and heartfelt wins laughs. And it wins investment from the audience because they believe you. And I'll tell you what, the most beautiful thing I've learned from musical improv is we've had people come to us in different countries that said, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so I did both.
oh
And we were
yeah,
like, oh, I think, like, how do you get cooler than that in
yeah.
improvisation? I mean, certainly as a person that did sketch comedy for so long and short form comedy for so long, yeah, I love laughs. But I don't know that there's anything cooler than having people laugh and then cry and then laugh harder because they cried, because you're feeling all these like beautiful
Yeah.
human levels that make everything a little bit more, it pops a little bit more, right? You feel, if you care about the characters, you laugh harder. If you care about the characters, you don't want something to happen to them. Like everyone kind of leans into the show in a different way. So I'd say like if you're nervous about musical improv because of the mechanics of it, just know that it's still going to improve every kind of improv you do. It's like it just enriches it so much.
Yeah, and so many people avoid it because they go, "Oh, I'm not a good singer. I've been told
Yeah.
I'm not a good singer." It's not about being a good singer. It's
I'll
just
tell you
but
what, it
yeah,
sure isn't, is it, Bob? Like that's
no,
that's a that's a definitely a fallacy. Good singers are impressive,
yeah,
but they're not necessarily the thing that people show up for. It's more that like a a, a really like dedicated player that's going hard at like the attempt of a song
mhm,
is either impressive. If they hit the mark, they're impressive and they sound amazing. If they
mhm,
miss the mark, they're comedic and it's worth watching. So like
yeah,
there's no lose. It's that like if you invest in the thing you're going to give, you hit the stars in some way. It's going to be
yeah.
comedically satisfying or like beautiful. So either one is a win.
And I always use like from Whose Line, use Colin Mockery as an example. He's not no
Yes.
one would consider him a good singer, but he's
Right.
good at musical improv.
Yeah, and everyone
Right?
wants to watch him, right? Like they still want to watch him because he's fun and he's into it.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly. But I love that. So what's the question to ask is, who are these people and how do they feel about each other?
Yeah, that's what we say a
That's
lot
it.
in classes here.
Yeah,
When we
I love
tour,
that.
we teach that a lot, but it's like a thing that we actually are writing on our classroom wall. So we can just
Yeah,
kind of point at it and say, if you're missing something in a scene, who are these people and how do they feel about one another? Because often younger students or like kind of re-upping students will think, I know how these people feel, but then you'll say about each other or about the scenario, and
yeah,
people will be like, oh, it's the scenario, right? Like when we know how we feel about the plot, that's still not going to get us engaged with one another.
yeah.
So a lot of enriching that long form, short form musical improv is about making sure your attention is pointed toward the other human that can actually affect the scene with you.
Yeah, and I've often heard, yeah, and I taught it myself, but I've heard from other teachers that yeah, that your song should be yeah about expressing an emotion that that character is feeling at that moment and not using it to advance the plot, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's absolutely right. We in our music we have a musical camp every year at the end of the summer at the Nest, and
Mhm.
we always say chew your food. Chew your food is just like once you've taken a delicious bite of who this character is or the scene is, you just
Mhm.
have to chew it through the song. It's just about celebrating what you already know and what you've already bitten off to chew. If you just kept like shoving that, then you wouldn't we don't want to learn new things. We want to celebrate what we know.
Yeah.
So it's a fun way of like getting people kind of hunkered down to sing.
And not everyone is overly familiar with musical theater. Like I haven't seen a whole lot of the classic plays over the, but enough to know. Do you think that we can borrow from the structure of of musicals? Because quite often in a musical, there's an inciting incident that happens. Something's changed. Um, Somebody falls in love, or there's some challenge that happens, and they sing about the inciting incident, and then they go back to the dialogue. Like, do you use that at all? Like with Hear the Musical, or do you think that's a good
We don't. Now, here's the thing though. I've
yeah.
been in musicals that do. There's certainly improvised musicals that use the hero's journey. It's like if anyone's
Mhm.
familiar with that, of like,
Yeah.
like a seven-part structure where we know when they're supposed to meet their adversary, or like when like when the ballad comes, and they can be really effective. But what I found from being in those kinds of musicals was it felt so technical that I would miss magic moments that
Yeah.
could have happened because I was like worried about the structure. So when Rance and I designed here the improvised musical, and probably why it's a little bit like why we're asked to go so many places, is it's truly a formless show. So we just
Mhm.
follow the bliss of whatever intersection happens. Luckily, it tends to intersect because probably we did the Herald for 15 years. But I
Right.
think that it just tends to intersect 'cause we're looking for patterns or looking for connections or ways to pull the story together. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to, but I found that in more structured shows of any type, that I always feel like, oh, it's too bad we can't go this way because we have to go this way.
Right.
And yeah, so we just took all the form away
So
just to see if it would become something magical tonight that only lives and dies tonight.
that's awesome. That's awesome. I love it when you perform with somebody that many years. Yeah, then
Yeah,
you get comfortable reading each other and following that bliss.
right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Um,
best.
let's talk about the Trevor Project. I know John's got a couple of images. I just some screenshots I grabbed from their website. But would you like to talk about why you chose this charity and why it's meaningful for you?
Yeah,
For you? Yeah.
you bet. We tend to do like a pairing with people here in Columbus when we do shows, and a lot of our recent pairings have been ACLU and Black Lives Matter and a place called Zora's House, which is a BIPOC resource center. The Trevor Project is a national charity, which is yeah, I think it was like mid to late 90s that it was made, and it helps people under 25 years old that are in the LGBTIQ community that are facing some kind of crisis or trauma in their lives, and they provide things like financial resources or just like places to be, or just the like yeah, community resources for those people not to feel alone, especially in more remote locations that aren't like giant
Mhm.
cities that where they can go. So it's just a really worthwhile community and worthwhile project that's been around for a good long time. It has a great, for anyone that's donating tonight, it has a great donation rating. If you want to like check its its history. It's got
Mhm.
like a great rating from nonprofit organizations and things like that too, which is cool because it's nice to know that people are actually giving where they say they're giving and things like that. But yeah, since it's Pride Month, we're gonna throw all of our love at the Trevor Project.
That's awesome. I think it's great that it's for people 25 and under,
Me too.
because I guess that's I guess at that age you're still wrestling with your identity and then how people are responding to you, and it's yeah, you don't have the wisdom of age, right, to
Yeah,
be able to handle
exactly.
that
And I
out.
mean, like anymore, it feels like so many people are finding out who they are at any stage, right? It's like there's so many stages of life now where it's like maybe I haven't completely found my truth yet and who I am, and it's just really cool to think they give a little more time. Than there's a space here in Cbus called Kaleidoscope Youth Center that's also great. They help mostly teens that are kind of like
Mhm.
not have no housing or something like that, where they've been like thrown out of their houses. But this is a nice place for like crisis and suicide prevention and things like that for Trevor
That's
Project.
awesome. So let me
Yeah.
tell you about some ways that people can that you, the listener and the viewer, can donate. Oh yeah, that does. Well, yeah. Let me talk. Let me mention this, and then let you know how you can leave questions on the Compass page for Tara to answer live here. But anyway, if you got the address, should be on our template here on the screen, and it's compassimprov.org/donate. If you go there and select the amount of your choice, and between now and I'm going to say Sunday night, this coming Sunday night, which is June 6th, any donations that come in through that page will go to the Trevor Project, and Compass will match the first $50 that come
Uh,
in. So if you're some of those early donators, we will double your donation and total that up and send it off within the next week or next week. And so yeah,
cool.
thanks for recommending that charity,
Yeah,
Tara.
you bet. My pleasure.
Um, and I noticed in some of the like you posted on Facebook promoting this interview tonight and listed some things that were interested in talking about, and one of them was supporting. I want maybe you explain this: support under amplified folks in comedic arts. What is that? Under amplified. I haven't heard that term a lot.
We're trying to kind of see that as a way of just making sure that arts are inclusive and an
Yeah.
open space rather than, I mean, boy, I'll tell you what, I mean, in around 20, gosh, it must have been 2015 or 2016 when we were designing the nest, we were making sure that we have an ethic, like a code of ethics policy that we've had in place
Mhm.
since we opened doors. We're like a safe space registered with the state of Ohio. And generally what it means is that we try to amplify, non-white, cis, male, able-bodied humans as
Yeah.
much as we can, that and include them in comedic art spaces, because generally speaking, improvisation overall has been a fairly white male dominated art form. So, as much as we can include people, we have a thing called a no paperwork scholarship at our theater, which just means like if you're in an underrepresented group like a person with disabilities, BIPOC, LGBTIQ, over 65, a veteran, anything like that that's like not commonly on an improv stage, then
Yeah.
we offer percentages off or no paperwork scholarships for people at need for classes or whatever, so that we can kind of push our community out. That's the hope, is that it's not just going to reach one type of person. And I think that that was kind of what, Chicago folks were trying to do when we were leaving town, was just like, how do you design a place that when you go to see a show and you only see white people on stage that are
Mhm.
able-bodied and straight and
Mhm.
whatever it may be, that you don't feel like you can be there. It's like you can be, you want to be what you can see. So when I was the only woman in my improv class when I moved to Chicago in 1999.
Wow. Yeah.
Isn't that wild? Like things
Yeah.
like that where you're like, oh, this is wildly changing all the time, but uh it's always better to keep pushing for more, especially like after 2020 when we all had a chance to meditate and sit with ourselves and see what's needed. It was nice that we had that stuff in place, but we kind of doubled down on it in the last year just to make
Yeah.
it more more out loud, and make sure that we're pushing that stuff around our town.
Cool. Well, I know that, yeah, in my classes, maybe it's because I'm hosting them, and I'm a little older now. That I see a range of ages that come to my classes, both in person prior, and which I'm going to be starting to open up here soon, and then on Zoom. And I've seen actually a lot of females and a lot of women
Yeah,
are, attending my classes on and
that's
offline.
good.
So I'm great. Yeah, I don't know if that's just changed over the years,
I
and
hope so.
but yeah,
I hope so. I mean, I know that our school specifically, we never really thought to do a diagnostic check of it because it just seemed like it was going in the right direction. But we realized
yeah,
last year, or the year before, that I think that 60% of our students are female. Or female bodied identified, and we were like,
yeah,
wow, that's a lot. Like, that's unusual. That's an unusual thing. It shouldn't be, but it is. It's like it's 60% was unheard of when I started improvisational classes,
yeah.
for sure.
That's fabulous. I want to remind people who are watching this on the Compass Improv page or watching it on Facebook to please post a comment, especially when you're watching it. I guess on the Compass, on the Compass Improv Facebook page. And I want to give a shout out. I may have forgotten to mention him earlier. John Chapin. Every month he handles all the tech, makes us look and sound good here. So let's give let's give a little
Hey,
hand
John.
to John. But he's keeping an eye on your comments, and he will be copying and pasting the best ones, or as many as many as we can get in here. He's going to be letting us see them on because we're on Zoom here, so we actually can't see the live feed on Facebook. But yeah, please post those, and I will pose those questions to Tara. I would love to see some familiar names from Columbus. I know you got folks from Chicago also
Yeah.
watching. One of my friends who attended my workshop there in 2016. I would love to see your names posting some questions here too for Tara. Let's see here. So Doug Imler, who's the current president of Compass
Hi, Doug.
Improv here, he I think we kind of covered some of this early. So like what were some when you first started doing musical improv, like what were some of your obstacles that you had to overcome, and how did you overcome it, which is probably what you teach now too. So
Yeah.
you remember struggling with it yourself?
That's the beauty of it, right? Is like, if every good improv teacher, I think, remembers what they didn't know and how that could be best explained to them as a student. Like, I think that's the secret to good improv teaching, is remembering what it felt like to be a student and just think, how do I do this? Or rather
Yeah,
than, that teacher brain can really take over, and then you lose touch with the
yeah,
questioning, like, heart, right?
totally.
I don't know what I don't know what I was like struggling with as a musical improviser, first and foremost. I think it was just, I was so delighted that it existed because I had done other kinds of improvisation before it.
Mhm.
I think I'd done primarily short and long form before stepping into musical long form, or medium form. And it was just so exciting to me that I think I just wanted to know more. I think the first musical improv thing I did that was a piece was a thing called Whose Chorus Line Is It Anyway? And it was like a long form play that was hosted by Comedy Sports Chicago
Mm,
and Baby Wants Candy, which is obviously a Chicago and New York, maybe in LA, all three, institution, which is more like a improvised story. Um, and I just thought it was so magical to like be able to do a fully improvised story. And then to do a herald after that and make it a musical it was more about like finding the structure that fit the
mm,
beast, and knowing when to sing and what to sing and things like that. I think that the hardest thing for people that are doing long form improvisational music is that it's usually thematically based rather than like story based. So a lot of people
mm,
have questions about, how do I find the theme of this
right.
show tonight, or how do we explore, what the thesis of our show is going to be, rather than, follow the prince through the forest, that kind of thing.
Right. And then there's all sorts of you can add as much different types of musical improv. There's the soloist, they're in the spotlight, and
Yeah,
you just know that they're singing, and the company's just following them. And you have duets where people are singing back and forth. You've got where somebody's the lead singer, and you got other people in the background who can do a little doo-wop or whatever, and a little add some choreography. I guess maybe that's more of a short form thing. I don't
I
know.
love it.
But it's all, I mean, all those are available to, and,
Yeah,
and I know one thing that Laura Hall, because I've hosted Laura and Rick Hall in St. Louis a couple of times and attended there, and originally met them kind of like I met you, attending one of their workshops when they were in
yeah,
town for Compass. And she talks about how with musical improv, it's different than normal non-musical improv, and that you can actually give cues to people. Like normally in a spoken, when you're not doing musical improv, you can't go, all right, now you say something. Whereas in musical improv, come over here and join me.
Yeah.
Everybody now.
Yeah.
Excuse me here.
She's so talented. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously love Whose Line, and it was so fun watching her, and I got to play a show with her in 2017 or 2018
Oh
with
wow.
just me and a woman named Shuli Cohen in LA that does a show called I don't know if it's still called the same thing. I'm just wondering if it is. She did a show at IO that, and now does a show I think at MI West Side or UCB, and
Mm.
it's this is great musical long form show. Anyway, we did a show called 51%, just me and Shuli and Laura Hall, and Laura. It was just so fun. Like we had the greatest time. We headlined a festival in San Francisco together,
Oh,
and
that would have been a blast.
Laura
Yeah.
is so good. I mean, like, duh, like we know, but she's just like she's so talented and so knows exactly what to do, and
Been
fun
doing
to
it a
have
long
her.
time. Yeah, and Whose Line is just scratching the surface of what she's
Yeah,
done. I
yeah,
mean, live, and because he does minimal stuff actually on Whose Line.
yeah. That's true. That's true.
Because a good accompanist does underscoring. They will, yeah, which is a really important part of their role, in addition to accompanying singers with chords and all that, and making it easy for you to sing over.
Yeah.
But let's see here. Yeah. Well, so what was your most memorable show is being asked here. Was there like especially
Ooh.
maybe when you were traveling? I don't know if it was the global or international, but even if you had one, just a memorable show that could be here, the musical, or it could be something else. Like
I
what's
have
a
so many. I mean, this is like I always think it's so funny when improvisers tell improv stories like this because I always wonder if it's like someone explaining a dream where you're like, cool, but you don't really
yeah.
it doesn't, but I think I have some ones that are worth like that are cool enough that it will translate that I remember a good handful of Second City shows. I remember a good number of comedy sports shows. I remember the last show I did at IO, old IO Chicago, where my whole team, Chaos Theory, that was a Herald team. Everyone like ended up like singing on stage shirtless to the Cheers theme song while the lights went down. They're just like very
Oh,
fun, elevated, ridiculous shows with lots of fun moves. But the
yeah.
here improvised musical shows I remember the best so far are one we did in Riga, Latvia. Weird that I already mentioned Riga, but it was just this magical show where everything was perfect and came together. Our musician was wildly talented and thought that he would really downplayed his talents. And he was so very good. And the story was so beautiful and was mirroring a lot of things that Rance and I were going through in real life. It was a very truth and comedy kind of show. And it was so beautiful. It was like such an enriched show. We luckily have it filmed,
Oh, good.
which is rare. That's fairly rare for an improv show, but we just remember the way it felt. It just felt very like everything just felt like it was already in motion and we weren't there. It just was, we were vessels in this show. And like 400 people from Latvia showed up in the middle of a town square to watch. It was like,
Oh
we
my
came because
God.
we heard there's an improviser in town. We want to see it ourselves. But like everyone came to this old city and watched this beautiful show. And it's just stuck in my head for years. That was probably 2014. That was really early on. So
Yeah.
that show. And I had a run at IO Chicago. I remember we did a show, Rance and I did a show where I played a young girl that was talking to her father, and the father was just kind of like, I don't like my life. I grew into a job I don't like. I grew into all these things I never said I'd be. And the daughter in the show drew like a giant tree house, and asked him to come sit in it with her, and they talked about how they could go back and like change themselves to be whatever they wanted to be next. It was such a beautiful song, and it like really stuck in my head of like we still have lots of life left. And a guy on Monday, it was a Saturday night show or a Friday night show, on Monday afternoon, through the vessels of Chicago, someone had gotten his email to IO Chicago, and IO Chicago had gotten it to us. But a person from the audience said, I watched your show on Friday night. I had so many regrets in my life that I went into work on Monday morning and quit my job and
Oh
walked
my
out.
God. Wow.
Yeah, and we were like, ah!
Yeah.
But it was just it was such a cool thing, 'cause it felt like this is an art that can actually change hearts and minds, or like represent people and truth on stage. And it just really stuck with us that it was powerful. you could do comedy and it could be a powerful, meaningful thing and a funny thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's some guy named Rance Rizzuto who
I
asked a
don't care for him.
question. His question, I don't know who this guy is, but he says, "What was your weirdest
Oh,
show, and was there a mechanical bull?" Which
look,
is
Rance is the worst. I don't know why he's hacking into the system here, but he's no good. Yeah, there was a mechanical bull at my worst show. Yeah, let me tell you about that, Bob, because that's a memorable one.
he, he refers to it as the weirdest show.
He was not even there. That was a comedy sports show in probably 2006.
Okay.
We went to just so everyone knows, like, yeah, can longtime improvisers that have seen a lot of cool shit, can they also be at the worst shows? And the answer is yes. We drove to Michigan for a touring show through Comedy Sports Chicago. It was at a blueberry farm in Michigan. None of the attendees spoke English.
Oh wow.
And it was not told to us that was the case. So we just played a lot of like physical games and tried to make it like accessible. But they didn't turn off the mechanical bull the entirety of the show that was only to the right of the stage. So it just turned into this giant, like hilarious, we had to just disregard that the bull was there the whole time while people were just riding the bull next to the show.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Improv is weird.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
yes.
So there was a period when I did like a 15-year period when I did stand up also
Mhm.
part time from like 85 to 2000 roughly.
Wow.
My guitar a lot and all that, and I had some marvelous gigs, where I was in a room full of people and there was like a wall of laughter after I hit my the end of the song or whatever. But I have this, but you had to get there, you had to go through the crappiest gigs. I remember
Yeah.
being at like somebody hired me for a cocktail party or something where nobody was listening. When no one's listening to a comic, it's the worst.
Yeah.
And I remember a guy
No.
walking by me as I'm standing there, I'm playing some funny song, and he walks by right in front of me, and he turns and he goes, "Are you still here?" And I keep walking on. And,
I'll
oh
tell
my
you
god,
what.
yeah,
It's a rite of passage for
yeah.
sure. I mean, I think that's kind of those days that at that time were like, oh no, like we're really doing this, have become the greatest stories, and the things you're like fondest of looking back is just like, remember this day, especially
Mhm.
when you're getting your chops and like, living with your friends and doing shows every day, especially in Chicago. Like I did shows every day in Chicago, for
Wow.
years of my life. So it was just like having those experience with communities and your peers is the best. The
But
best.
I want to go back and just talk a little bit about the Nest again, because I know that was a big
Yeah.
undertaking. That was the first time. I mean, this only venue, and I think it's changed locations once. Or is it you're in your second space or third, fourth? Oh wow,
Bob, it's been a real ride. It's
wow,
been a
in
real
4.5
ride.
years. Okay,
I'll tell you what, it's been a ride.
yeah.
Yeah. We've been
Uh,
we opened up at a place called Cherry Street, and it was a good space, but it was like kind of a warehouse. It was cool for our first time because we were just kind of like testing the market and what it would be
mhm,
like. It really exploded, and we had way more notoriety and like butts and seats than we expected when we first started. And we had a horrible landlord, I'll say it. We had a horrible landlord, and he basically came under all this code pressure from the city from something else he owned,
mhm.
and it shut down. And like we like showed up for a festival, and it shut down. They had an orange sticker on the door, but we didn't do it. It was our landlord. So it was
Wow.
like a big rush to have a temporary space. Then we had a long-term space for about 2.5 years at a place called Broad Street. That was great, but it was like a restaurant, so it felt like it was only the Improv Theater, but it was designed as an Italian restaurant. So it just wasn't the perfect space. So we made the leap to the space we're at now. But that was supposed to open in March of 2020.
Oh
So we've
no.
been paying rent on that space since December of 2019.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
without being able to open. So it's been a tough, I mean, everyone gets it. It's been a tough year for the pandemic, and having a brick and mortar that has just basically been sitting there waiting for humans to enjoy it. But we hope to open that grand space we've always wanted in about 2 or 3 weeks,
Cool.
according
And
with the
I think I
city.
saw on Facebook that you just started having in-person classes, and
Yeah, we
you
did.
mentioned before we went live that you don't mind me asking you. Like, I'm wrestling with this too, trying to figure out how to go back to live. Do you make it exclusively fully vaccinated people? How do you handle the people that, for whatever reasons, are choosing not to? I mean, do you mind?
Not at all.
How are you
I think
handling
it's
that?
so, yeah, I think it's so great that theater people are talking about this stuff because it's an it's it's an unknown world, right? So we closed I think on March 14th of 2020, we were like very quick to close.
Mhm.
At least here in Columbus, I should say, and everything's a little different, right? But we got back and shut down. That was our last show. Um, and we kind of had our sister, one of our sister theaters, huge theater in Minneapolis. We talked to them about how they keep saying like first to close, last to open. And I think that's like a good theme in general. It's
Mhm.
just we want to keep our performers safe and our audiences safe. So we went virtual all year.
Sure.
Um, and we were virtual. We probably had maybe 30 courses over the course of the year in various forms globally. We taught in like like South
Yeah.
Korea. We taught in yeah, like in Europe, but we just all over, but also here in town in the States. Um,
Yeah.
and now in May, I think mid-May, we started in-person classes, but all students had to be vaccinated and wear their mask for the duration of class until the next session. So then we just kind of reevaluate and do something like that again. And everyone was really cool about it, believe it or not. I think that maybe Columbus has had a fairly good rollout of vaccine, meaning like
Mhm.
I think we're at something like 60% or 70% vaccinated in Ohio, which I wouldn't have guessed maybe
Yeah.
a year ago. Um, which is sad that that's kind of high, but that's where we're at. And that helped because people were ready to. They were so excited that something was happening that I think people were willing to go get
Yeah.
vaccinated to do a class. So it helped. I don't know what it'll be like for the next round now that like the CDC's lifted guidelines and stuff. We weren't dealing
Yeah.
with that, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens in late June.
Yeah, yeah, because a lot of stores are saying if you're fully vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. But
Yeah,
if you're not, please wear one. It's in the honor system, and so
right.
I imagine, yeah, I don't, I'm sure she'll try to figure out how to navigate my own classes in that
Yeah, and you
regard.
want
Yeah.
to you want to be safe and take care of yourself. And I think that it seems like a lot of people gravitating towards improvisational spaces are probably willing to do things to be creative. Like they're
Mhm.
willing to, join the fold and kind of think about
Yeah,
how they can best protect one another. I hope if
yeah,
they already believe the tenets of our art form. But yeah, I know it's a struggle because it's like the honor system seems like a flawed,
yeah.
a flawed way to get back into
You got to
spaces.
really trust that people have your back in that
Yeah,
situation. Yeah.
yeah.
So I want to remind people that we're coming down to the wire probably in our last 5 minutes or so. So if you last chance to ask Tara a question live, just following up on the nest thing, I'm trying to think of your experiences and how maybe because not everyone's going to start a venue, but what did you learn about maybe creating a community, and we talked a little bit about your welcoming, inclusive nature, but what are some things you learned about creating a place where people feel comfortable to take classes, to do shows, and maybe even also advice for people that want to teach this art form, whether it's regular improv, short form, long form, or musical improv. I know that's a lot of throwing on the plate here for the last few minutes. But any thoughts on that teaching or leading a community of improvisers? Yeah.
That's such a, I mean, you're right. It's such a, I think that what we're learning now in 2021 is that
Mhm.
someone that is sound and good at improvisation doesn't necessarily mean that they're meant to be a teacher or to make a community. And I think the best
Mhm.
thing you can do for yourself to at least try to prepare to be the best you can be, as we all learn and change, is make sure that you have equitable policies in your spaces. Make sure that when you're starting a class that you have a way for a student to say they're having discomfort if there's material that doesn't make them comfortable. Maybe like find ways that you can make sure that your students are expected to believe in abundance and lifting one another up in order to succeed, rather than looking for like who's the best in the class, because that's not going to help the community at large. And
Mhm.
I think like even if you are not received the way you want to be received, like keep reiterating and keep trying to create a culture where you say like we want you to be here, and like ideally those uh, feelings of like how can you create community rather than competition is really the best thing that a community can do for itself. So I think that's something I would say. I don't know that, I mean, I also would say if you want to be a great improv teacher, be kind to yourself and like love yourself and read a lot, but also have your own thoughts and think and like sit with yourself and wonder what makes someone grow. Remember what you didn't remember as a
Yeah.
student and like try to formulate exercises that no one's created yet that would help you learn what you wanted to learn rather than like reading a book and copying what someone else does. Like
Right.
we need more improv ideas. And I think that people get so hung up on like, well, what's this person telling me to do rather than like, what did you need to be told? What is the self-examination you can
Yeah.
do to kind of make yourself write a book or to make yourself write
Yeah.
curriculum or whatever?
And even though I've definitely evolved as a teacher, I started doing it maybe 2012 or whatever. So that's
Yeah.
been, wow, it's been 7 years already.
Wow.
I've is that 7? Yeah, I think so.
9 years. You're even
9 years.
more.
Yeah, what the heck am I
Even
talking
more.
about?
Yeah.
I thought that something wasn't computing there. But I loved attending other people's classes just to get different influences and seeing how other teachers present and some people. So have you found, or are there, and this is probably my final question here, is like, is there something that you teach or that you promote that's different than that you haven't heard much from other teachers, that's uniquely Tara, is in your advice, um or maybe where you go against the grain or of the typical.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that like who are these people and how do they feel? Anthem is fairly unique to the nest.
Hmm.
Um, kind of this idea of yes plus Y. We tended to like be a I know that there's other people that teach this too now, especially, but we definitely were talking a lot about not only yes and, but yes and plus Y, or if this is true, what else is true? Like at an early stage that makes I like to promote excavation of character rather
Hmm.
than just kind of like looking for plot points that to think like if this person behaves this way, tell me why that is true, rather than kind of hurrying through plot premise and twists.
Yeah.
I like to know more about the individual because I think that audiences lean in to representative truth on stage. And so for me, um, we've been saying this quite a bit at the Nest too, that like a good show feels like student council for the human spirit. It's like
Mhm.
those people on stage are just representatives of what the audience gets to feel like every day. So we're
Mhm.
just kind of showing them that this is what you feel like and we know, and we're just kind of heightening that and celebrating that. So I think that that kind of comedy is the most appealing because people lean into what they feel is closest to what their stories and truths
Yeah.
are.
And I know
And
that. Oh,
no,
I'm
no,
sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know the typical advice for scenes, or at least in short form, but I think in long form too, they always say you want to establish who, what, and where. Who are these people? Where's this? What environments is taking place? What's going on? But I have realized over the years that the why is, yeah, should really be added to that.
That's the
Uh,
deal. Like
yeah.
I think that who, what, and where was a really great technique given to us a long time ago that kind of some people call it like in Europe they call this platform. I don't know if that's like as much in the States, but who, what, and where kind of makes a platform for your scene. And it's
Mhm.
a very Johnstonian way of like designing a scene, like Keith Johnstone. It's really interesting. But the bad part of that is who, what, and where is often title based. Like I know who I'm with, you know, I know where I am and I know what I'm doing, but it doesn't tell me anything about why you are, right?
Yeah.
And why you are is what the human spirit needs to laugh at a comedy. Like you laugh at comedies that are enriched by personality. And it's not about like the template of what the scene is about. It's about the people that are in the scene that have an adventure. So it's more about like going backwards at the Nest for sure. Of
Yeah.
I can learn about you, then maybe I'll want to take your adventure. But I don't want to know about your adventure first. Because then when that wears off, we have nothing left. So it's always
Right.
like this kind of fun idea of the nucleus of the scene has to be the humans.
Very nice. The great to end on that. I want to remind people that the Tara's chosen charity for this interview is the Trevor Project, and you can and what if you donate through the Compass website between now and Sunday night, we will total up all that. We will match the first $50 that come in, so you could conceivably double your donation. And you do that by going. It should be on your screen here, but just go to compassimprov.org/donate. Feel free to be generous and put in the amount of your choice, and we will send that off to the Trevor Project next week. Tara, where can people find out about you, or if they're coming through Columbus, that find out about the Nest? Where's some places online that we can send folks?
I'm going to hit you. Okay, so my website is outdated, but it's teradefrancisco.com. That's also my Facebook profile and various whatever handles, TikTok, etc. Whatever people use these days. The Nest Theater is nesttheater.com, spelled with an R-E, so NESTTHEATRE.com. If you want to learn about our classes or our ethos or our we have 25 main stage rotational shows, and we do like summer camps, like immersion camps and things like that, TV writing and things like that too. That's a good place to go for that. I run the improvretreat.com. That happens usually in May.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll see you next year. I'm running a new thing called the Alchemy Retreat, which is a small boutique retreat that's similar to the Improv Retreat. That's thealchemyretreat.com. I'm trying to think of anything
Wow.
else. Oh, I do a game show called One Hot Dollar with Rants. That's a weird, fun internet game show. And otherwise, you can probably just catch me on some random jingles and commercials and dumb stuff like that here and there.
It's amazing. Well, you live a rich, fun, and invigorating life. And
That's
so
what it's all about,
I
baby.
know. Thank you for sharing your enthusiasm, and I love this this conversation. So I hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to donate to the Trevor Project. Yes, do it now before you get
Now,
distracted. If you wait, yeah, just do it
do it
now.
now.
Go to the website,
Those
donate.
kids.
So Tara, I really appreciate your time, and have a great spring and summer.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for including me. I'm so happy to talk to you and love you, St. Louis.
That's right. Come back soon. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So long, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.